Good evening. I find it awfully peculiar that as you go through life, you'll find those in strong opposition of the truth. So much so that they're afraid to use their real name and come forward and make a valid claim, but they're so quick to slander others who help guide people along their journey. A lot of people ask me, Derek, why don't you block these people who allege that you're a scam artist yet produce no evidence or proof? The simple fact is, if these people had any first-hand knowledge, instead of casting stones behind a false and fictitious misnomer, they'd come forward in their true name with the evidence and facts to support their claim. I'm not going to remove people that continue to cast stones. I'm going to leave them there to set an example. The point is this: it's easy to hide behind a name and shout a bunch of obscenities that isn't your own. You see, after all, that's what every lawyer does. That's what every judge does. That's what every politician does. They hide behind a title. They use the title as a mask to do things that otherwise is not noble, ladies and gentlemen. They say, I didn't do that. It's politics. I didn't do that. It was the judge. I didn't do that. I'm a prosecutor. That's my job. The people of the world are about to be red-pilled at a phenomenal speed. It will be too hard for a lot of people to cope with. The truth ultimately will destroy them because of the perception of reality that's been ingrained in them. I don't hide behind a misnomer. I don't allege to have all the answers. But one thing's for damn certain about me: I will not quit. I will not back down, because I know ultimately freedom has never been free. It takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of energy to put yourself out there. I don't hide my face. It's just a little dark where I'm at right now. I publicly call it like I see it. I have the gall and the testicles to go in these courtrooms and live stream and show you that I practice exactly what I preach. I don't see too many people out there doing that. And for these naysayers that say I'm a fraud, if you allege that I'm a fraud and you claim to have the answers, then you are hindering your brothers and sisters from ascending of the mind by sending slanderous tones out there, but never backing up anything you're saying, never leading people down the correct path. You yourself are exposing yourself for what you are. You're there to misdirect people, to misguide people, because the truth scares the hell out of you. And you need these people to be willfully ignorant and dumb so they will continue on feeding you. See, my goal is to help people wake up before it's too late. And for all intents and purposes, we may already be there. It's no secret that the governments of the world are not your friend, ladies and gentlemen. They never have been, and they never will be. It's no secret that there are secret societies out there hell-bent on utilizing your energy And when they no longer have a purpose for you, their remedy is to dispose of you. These are facts that cannot be denied any longer. JFK said it best. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And in the same token, I say, ask not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for your fellow man. This is not an easy walk. It's not an easy path. And you will find the harder you push to bring forward truth, light, with dignity, honor, and respect, in good faith, with good conscience, and for damn good reason, you will bring demons out of the dark, hell-bent on destroying you. This is about right and wrong. This is about good and evil. Make no mistake about it. This is a spiritual battle. My studies started back in 1302, and I thought that I had made it to the beginning of when all this had begun to flourish and transpire. And for a few years, I had that mindset. I was stuck in my ways. It all started with the Unum Sanctum and the trilogy of palpables. It was only when I was in prison for 16 days that I started to read that Bible, and I realized it went a lot further back than that. It went all the way back to the beginning of time. Because without one, you can't have the other. Being enlightened is not a pleasurable thing. Not in this evil, sadistic, satanic world. It is not a pleasure at all to watch your fellow brothers and sisters suffer day in and day out from the indoctrination that was designed for a purpose. That purpose was articulated by Colonel Mendel House, who told Woodrow Wilson in a private meeting, very soon, the American people, and furthermore the people of the world, will pledge their biological property in an ancient system of pledging. And not one man in a million will ever figure it out. And if he should, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability, because after all, it's the only way to float government. All corporations are insolvent. All banks are private, for-profit, insolvent entities that need your life source energy. See, without you, none of it works. I'll be the first one to tell you I don't have all the answers. But I will tell you this. The surmountable evidence that I have come across in my lifetime is undeniable at this point. That we've all been had the world over. You see, what did we spend? 20 years and over $12 trillion blowing shit up? And we could have fed and housed every hungry man, woman, and child in this world. You tell me that we're on the right trajectory. You tell me that the governments of the world are hell-bent on fixing and rectifying the situation and the mess they have created. I don't see it. You'll find the man that tells the truth is always the enemy of the powers that be. It's been that way from the beginning of time. The land patent. I have heard so many lawyers tell me, that's old stuff, Derek. We don't use that anymore. Just like lawyers tell me, We don't use declaratory judgments. I know why you don't use declaratory judgments, ladies and gentlemen. You want to know the answer? Because a lawyer cannot testify with first-hand perfected knowledge of any of the facts. And because of that, a lawyer can never obtain a declaratory judgment. Period. That's why they don't use it. Because they can't. They weren't there when the issue or situation occurred, and thus they have no first-hand knowledge, and they can't put together an affidavit and be deposed and receive a declaratory judgment. That's why they don't use it. It's not that it doesn't set precedent. It's not that it doesn't have relevance. It's that in their legal frameworks, they're barred from doing it. Just the same with the land patent. They like to say, well, that doesn't have any relevance. That doesn't have any precedence. They're hell-bent on discouraging you from seeing the truth, the light, and the way. Why? Because as soon as you call that land patent forward in your good name and you remove the lot, block, parcel ID number, zone improvement project number, address, and easement, they have no more jurisdiction. They have to ask permission to trespass on your land. And anybody that's gotten far enough to call a land patent forward in their name through a letters patent wouldn't be so ignorant as to invite a vampire back into their frickin' life to drain them and deplete them of their life source energy. Ladies and gentlemen, taxes are voluntary. Period. Everything is done by consent. Equity will not aid a volunteer. And equity imputes an intention to fulfill an obligation. You wouldn't believe how many lawyers tell me, I've never seen anybody win a case the way that you go about it, Derek. There's a reason for that. They hide it from them. Because it might cause them to grow a moral compass and realize that what they're doing in their life is detrimental to the eternal life that they have promised for them in the future. If the men and women stopped hiding behind a mask, a corporate fiction, an entity, stopped using I was just doing my job and took moral accountability for their actions, you would see a change overnight. They go through police academy training and they tell them, people will respect your authority. You are the authority. You ask all the questions. You take no shit from nobody. You are the king of that road. They answer to you because those filthy, vagrant peasants are always guilty of something. I know these things because I have many of friends who have been through the police academy. I have many of friends who have been trained by the FBI and told what to do with so-called sovereign citizens, people who believe in the Constitution and why it was constructed. Where does a country go when it falls outside of its senses and denies sound logic and principles? The truth is this: there's only one law in this entire world. Do no harm. And it doesn't matter under what guise or occupation or title you hide behind, you are still 100% liable for your actions, your trespass, your breach of another man's rights. How quickly we lost our direction. The founding fathers, undoubtedly, seeing where we have gone today, would be in great distress. Our offspring no longer learn the truth. The schools are nothing more than indoctrination. Do not steal. Everything is equated to a trespass by way of theft. Everything. Murder, believe it or not, is a trespass by way of theft. What did they take? What are they guilty of thieving? Life. Life that didn't rightfully belong to them. Life they didn't create. So it's murder, trespass by way of theft. The government is the largest human traffickers in the world. And it's no wonder they have come up with this wonderful scheme to terrorize the world over. Because all of the elite were being exposed for the pedophile, child trafficking, sick, sadistic fucks that they are. It's like Mr. Anonymous said. He said the people that are helping them get rid of the useless feeders, breeders, and eaters, as soon as they have fulfilled their obligation with the empty promises that they've been promised, whether it be fortune, fame, whatever it is, he said they'll be the next ones that they euthanize. I said, why would you think that way? He says, honestly, Derek, because the people that are doing this, they have some aspect of honor. And the people they're approaching to push this narrative will soon meet their fate after they've fulfilled their objective. He said, how could you be so certain of that? He said, it's like this. They don't have respect for rats that sold their own people out, that helped push their agenda, that sold their souls for fat bank accounts, for fiat, for currency that, quite honestly, doesn't have any relevance. And because they were traitors to their own people, as soon as these people are done utilizing them to manifest mass genocide, they'll be the next ones euthanized because they can't be trusted. Like I keep telling you guys, everything is about trust. And even these sick, sadistic people that are pushing this narrative upon the people of the world, they operate on trust. They trust one another, even though their plan is absolutely diabolical. Undoubtedly, mass genocide. The people that are helping them, the congressmen, the senators, the judges, the lawyers that are all going along to get along, will soon find that they're on the wrong end of the stick. And they'll say, but, we helped you. We helped you. Yeah. You turned against your own flesh and blood. You turned against your own families. You turned against your own cousins. You turned against your own mothers. We couldn't trust you if we wanted to, and because of that, you're a worthless waste of our space and our oxygen. Make no mistake about it, they'll be euthanized at the end too. If I went on national television talking about depopulation of the world, more than likely, I'd be facing a grand jury indictment for conspiracy to commit mass genocide. Yet Bill Gates and so many others like Ted Turner, Henry Kissinger, the Rothschilds, all openly talk about it in newspapers, on television, on the radio. They publish books about it, and nothing happens to them. Mr. Anonymous told me that Afghanistan is where countries go to die. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Derek, let me tell you, Attila the Hun and so many others have been to Afghanistan. And none of them have ever survived. Their nations have always collapsed. Afghanistan is a place where people go to war and countries die because they never stop fighting. There's no gain there. So what have we been doing there for the last 20 years? Killing off a nation, draining its economic and financial aspects, coming into more debt underneath the bankers and their policies. I dare anybody to go ask a coroner what his financial report looks like over the last couple years, and I'll bet you he's not any more wealthy than he was in 2016, 17, or 18. Just think about this logically. If we were in an international pandemic, do you think that gun-toting morons on the highway would risk their families' lives pulling you over and giving you frivolous tickets, securities on the side of the road to generate revenue? Do you think honestly that they'd be pulling you into court for victimless crimes, and that any self-respecting judge who had knowledge of an international pandemic would subject himself to being in the room with 50, 60, 70 people that could possibly cause him to fall ill? Think about that. Think about that for just one moment. How many of those educated idiots would put their lives at risk to fleece people for victimless fucking crimes if there really was a pathogen out there causing people to flop like fish in the street? I'm not brilliant. I'm far from it. Fuck, I'm not even the most intelligent man you guys have ever encountered in your life. I'm just like you guys. The difference between me and a lot of people is I have the balls to say it. And people misconstrue that as brilliance. It's just a lot of heart, guys. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks of me. I didn't ask to be here, and I don't give a damn when the good Lord takes me. The sooner, the better. Because this place is as sinister as it gets. Everybody hides behind the guise that they're noble and they're doing something that's right, just, and fair. When you read Ayn Rand, who was quite brilliant, it's really hard to read her books. Her vocabulary is extensive. I had to break out a thesaurus, an encyclopedia, a dictionary, the internet, just to read half of her book, because her vocabulary is so extensive. And it's good because it challenges the brain to learn, to grow, to be a little more eccentric, to have an extended vocabulary that you can use around people who are inclined to understand what you're saying. In one of her books, she says, "There's no such thing as a selfless act. Everything that we do in our lives is selfish." I got to thinking about that. I said, man, everything that I'm doing for my daughter. And James Bethel laughed. He said, yeah, you can tell yourself that all you want, Derek. But the truth is, you do what you do because you're doing it for yourself. The idea of doing it for your daughter is noble. But the truth is, you're doing it for yourself to bring yourself peace of mind, knowing that she won't have to deal with this on her own. Perhaps you could thwart off what's transpiring and what's coming into existence. But in hindsight, in truth, you're doing it for you. So everybody is selfish. Everybody. There's nothing that we don't do in this world that we're not being selfish about. That's the real brilliance. Being able to acknowledge and accept the fact that what we do is out of a means of survival and it's selfish. Until you come to that cognitive realization, then you'll always be in denial. And by being in denial, you deny yourself, you deny the truth, and you lead people astray. I'm not perfect. I'm not better than anybody else. But I see some things that need to change in real short order, or we are beyond screwed. So again, just wanted to come out there and point this out. The people who like to cast stones, come out with your real name. Bring forward your supporting facts and evidence you rely upon for slandering and defaming people. Otherwise, your words have no meaning. There's no force, there's no weight, and there's no effect behind it. Effectually, you're nothing more than a disinformation agent, whether you're being paid or not, or you're just that ignorant. One of them the other day that was being defaming said, I've been following you for a long time. And it appalled me, because if you've been following me for so damn long, you know he who brings the claim has the onus of probandi and must prove his claim. I've been saying that for years. So if you've been following along, it just goes to show me that you're willfully ignorant. You're willfully ignorant. With that said, I'm going to let you guys go this evening. I'm going to get back to studying. We do have a class coming up September 18th, 2021 at 1 p.m. Central Time for land patent, how to call it forward. People said, well, Derek, if you still owe on your house, ladies and gentlemen, if you think you still owe on your house after taking the banking course, I'm not sure how to help you. Your over-the-counter security paid for the house. Legal tender is not the only way to pay for things, ladies and gentlemen, because there is no money in the economy. There's no money. It's all pledges and signatures, qualified endorsements. All right? Ask yourself this. When you sign that promissory note, that security, that negotiable instrument, and then you pledged your home as collateral to support the mortgage, the alleged loan, mortgage being dead contract. How did you pledge something if you didn't own it? Now keep in mind, you hadn't slid one FRN note, one check to these people. And they slide a piece of paper in front of you wanting you to collateralize your real estate and property to bolster the loan. How do you pledge something that you don't rightfully fucking own? This is common sense 101. And the saddest thing about it is, I gotta explain it to people. That means that your promissory note, your over-the-counter security that created and manifested a trust relationship that was received by a trustee acting on behalf of a principal, actually paid for the real estate and property, ladies and gentlemen. How else would you have been able to pledge the real estate and property and collateralize it to support a loan? Food for thought. Just think about that. People say, well, Derek, lawsuits suck. They do. I'm not saying lawsuits are the only way to go. You do realize that everything is insurance, right? And I mean everything. You got securities, you got excise taxes, and you got insurance. That's what everything is. All under the ancient system of pledging. I don't have all the answers, but I will tell you this. The title insurance company engaged in insurance fraud. And I can say that with absolute conviction, because they have no skin in the game, yet purport to be a real party in interest should you default. Shouldn't you be the insured party? Aren't you the real party in interest? Aren't you the only one that pledged anything? Aren't you the only one that's risking anything at all in this whole Ponzi scheme that's been developed under the color of law? It's hard to come out of the fog when you've been so indoctrinated. And the further that you became educated, the harder it is to see. I have people that are brilliant when it comes to reading books. 4.0 students all through Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Very brilliant, very articulate people. And I show them this shit, and their cognitive dissonance kicks in. They see it, they read it, and they still want to try and discredit it as though it doesn't exist. And then I take a kid that dropped out of high school, and I show him this stuff, and he's like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I get it. It always floors me how people that are less than inclined to have a college education or had furthered their education past high school pick it up so much quicker than the ones who went through an indoctrination program. They bait you. You want to know the first lesson anybody that goes to college learns? What's the first lesson you learned when you went to college? And hell, I even went to college. And I don't have a high school diploma or a GED. We'll figure that one out. And I still went to college. What's the first thing they teach you at college? I bet nobody will get this answer right. Here it is. Are you ready for it? The first thing you learn, the first education you get, is how to become a debtor. Sign here, please. Sign here, please. Sign this. Initial that. Thank you. Boom. Just by signing a few documents, $50, $60, $80, $180,000 in debt. Boom. That's your first lesson of college. Don't believe me? Think about it for a little bit. All these people out there saying, oh, Derek, you're a scam artist. You're just trying to misdirect people. Really? If you sit down and have a cup of coffee tomorrow morning and think about this conversation practically and realistically, you'll find that I'm not bullshitting you. It's a fact. You can't have a crime without a victim. The state is a figment of man's imagination, no more real than Christopher Kringle, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. And you wonder why we're all told these fairy tales as we grow up as kids. That's exactly why. To cloud our mind, to cloud our judgment, to strip us from reality. So we live in Never Never Land like Peter Pan and pretend that we've got food on the table. Pretend we've got money. George Carlin got it right. They don't want you awake. Because then you'll realize it's not an American dream. It's an American nightmare. Again, I'll tell you, I don't proclaim to have all the answers. You will never hear me say I know it all. I will tell you this much. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Because the fraud is so great, you can come at this a number of ways and prevail. For example, you don't have to sue the title insurance company. There's a form called an heirs and omissions claim. And because there's a super top secret federal lien against all real estate and property directly tied to the national debt, simply contacting one agency and getting the direct payoff quote is enough for you to use the error and omissions form and file a claim. You don't have to sue anybody. It's like a car crash. You ever notice how you don't have to sue anybody in a car crash? You just turn over insurance papers to one another and they figure it out? They just cut you a check? Wouldn't it be so nice to do the same thing with the title insurance company who is engaged actively in insurance fraud by alleging somehow they're the beneficiary of the insurance policy, not having any skin in the game at all? I love you guys. That's my rant for the evening. Power of attorney. Y'all might want to start studying that a little bit and realize who you are, where your authority comes from, and why it's so important to create your own record. Your record trumps any record they create. Now you have to ask yourself why. Because you're the only one with first-hand perfected knowledge of who you are. By default, under military occupation, martial law, since Abe Lincoln, by default, you are presumed and assumed to be a U.S. citizen, subject, vagrant, slave to their system in legal land. I had a lawyer tell me one time, we grew pretty close. I said, I need you to stop coming to my office. What you're doing is very noble, but I'm going to give you this warning, and I would ask that you take heed in what I tell you. And I only say this to you because I know that you're an honorable man, Derek. Stop doing what you're doing. Leave it alone. Because although what you're doing is noble, it's honorable. They're going to put you in the deepest, darkest hole they can fucking find to shut you the fuck up. And with that said, with all respect, please do not come to my office anymore. That was gut-wrenching. It was heartbreaking to me. This man decided to be honest after being a bar attorney for 50 fucking years. Knowing the truth, and told me that he had discovered the truth when he was in his 30s, and asked, Derek, what was I to do? I had law debt, I had a mortgage on a house, I had daughters, I had a wife. What would you have of me? And I said, stand the fuck up and sound off like you got a pair. And he goes, Derek, they will take everything from me. Everything. You do not know what you're playing with. You have not a fucking clue. This is bigger than you could ever imagine, Derek, and you're not going to stop it. I may not be able to stop it, but I am hell-bent on exposing it. I am hell-bent on showing you guys exactly what I've been shown, exactly what I've been taught. Mr. Anonymous will never come out on a public forum like this and do anything of the sort. And yet the man exposed a lot of crime throughout his days after becoming learned, only to find out that his position was terminated. They no longer had a need for him because his position was rendered obsolete, so he couldn't sue them. After pointing out their breach of the trust, breach of their fiduciary duties, and we're talking about high-ranking officials. All it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to sit around and do nothing. And when those good men are ostracized, to shut up and sit back down on the porch. Well, I, for one, will not shut up. I've been ostracized my entire life. It don't bother me. I got skin made of leather. Doesn't bother me at all. I stand for truth, light, and justice. I do my best not to harm anybody, and if it comes to be that way, I offer remedy as an honorable man so that we don't have to be in the court system. But you see, the problem is when the state brings a claim against you, nobody can tell me where Mr. and Mrs. State is. Nobody can give me their address. Nobody can tell me their real names or where their birth happened. Where's their birth certificate? When did it happen? Where can I find these people that are alleging harm, damage, injury, and loss? If that doesn't prove to you this is a fraud and a scam from day one, I don't know what will. There have been some times I have beat men mercifully, knocked a few teeth out of a couple people. I always went into court, hung my head low, and said, yep, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Well, hold on, man. We got a process here. You just can't come in here and say you're guilty and want sentenced. Why not? Aren't you a judge? I'm before you telling you that I'm guilty. What do we need to go through any processes for? You want me to explain how I did it? I grabbed him by his throat. I lifted him about a half a foot off the ground. I punched him so damn hard he knocked the back windshield out of his car with his own body. What more do you need? Well, we have a process. This is before I understood that they were monetizing everything, that it had nothing to do with justice and everything about unjustly enriching themselves. There can be no justice when compensation is had. It's called baratray. It was a word that I wasn't familiar with until James Bethel and Mr. Anonymous showed up. They started to explain to me what baratray was. And I go, well, that's bribery, isn't it? No, not quite bribery. Nobody's bribing them to take it. They're taking it willingly. Later on, I spoke to a woman whose husband was a lead prosecuting attorney and told me that, oh yeah, they would constantly get a hold of him week in and week out asking him if he would accept the grants. And he would always say no, because he believed in what he was doing. He believed that taking grants for casting people to prison was immoral and wrong. That's what they're guising it as, ladies and gentlemen, as grants. And they're getting these grants from the federal government, who's allegedly, purportedly, charged with the duty of protecting your rights. Yet they issue grants to the lower states to float the economy and to float the government and give horrendous kickbacks for administering the abortion of justice. There is no justice when monetary compensation is involved, ladies and gentlemen. Prisons for profit are wrong in every way. And how we allowed it to become this way, I'll never understand. Thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.